I regret to inform you that the colonies are at it again, so I guess we better keep an eye on them and see what they're up to. So Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth II statues torn down by protesters in Winnipeg, Canada.
It's a weird way of saying savages.
Yeah, that's why. I'm sorry, but if you're tearing down statues, you are a savage regardless of your race or ethnicity. It doesn't
More importantly,
matter.
if you're tearing down statues of Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth, you're probably a misogynist.
Elizabeth II.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
The modern queen.
Yeah, but not like Elizabeth I did much wrong.
Did she kill her sister or something?
Well, I mean, in the colonial sense.
Oh, okay.
She lived before that sort of era.
But Elizabeth II, I mean, what
Yeah, what does she do?
I don't even know. But so this is all going around the controversy and the scandal that is the discovery of unmarked graves outside previous schools. So let's get into this. Statues of Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth II have been torn down by protesters in Winnipeg amid increasing anger about the discovery of mass graves of Indigenous children near former assimilation schools. So I looked into this a little bit because I wanted to know what was going on. So my understanding is the Canadian government from, I think it was like 1880 or something like that, decided that they would assimilate the natives. So they would get the people who were living in, let's say, Indians, First Nations. I don't know what the damn term is, but I'm just going to use Indians because it's simpler, and CGP Grey is right on this. I don't know if you've seen this argument about this, but the closer you live to an Indian reservation, the more likely you are to say Indian rather than Native American, and the Indians themselves use Indian, because why wouldn't they? Like, if you need a collective word to work under, that's the one that's going to work.
I feel like if I was someone from India, I would object to this.
Oh, but that's the thing. They don't interact with India, so what do they care?
I suppose so, yeah.
The Bureau of Indian Affairs, so on and so forth. You can
But I mean, imagine if they had to interact
And
with the real Indians, you know.
Anyway, so the Canadian government in that time decided they would assimilate the local, and it was a horrible practice in which they would go to the house of a native family, an Indian family, take the kids by force, and then take them to an assimilation school. And then the school would be taught in English. It would be British culture, and therefore the kids would become imbued with the culture of the country. That was the concept. And as liberals, the kids belong to the parents, not the state. Leftists, how's your opinion on that? Who do the kids belong to?
That's a good question.
Something to keep in mind about this whole thing.
Yeah.
So
this is what 19th century social workers did.
So the schools, as my understanding, were run by Christians. The first one I think here is run by Catholics, and the way they would treat the kids is...
Imagine how Catholics treat people.
Yeah, I mean, beatings, things like this, maltreatment, and a significant number of kids. I don't know what's proportional for the time. I don't know what infant mortality is at this point, but a lot of the kids ended up dying.
Yeah, not
and
good.
They would not take the kid back to their parents, but instead bury them in a grave nearby, and many of them are unmarked. In the one in the Catholic school case, I believe the priest came back, because this process went up until the 90s, was they came back and took the crosses off to try and make it unmarked. So that's why many of the graves are unmarked.
Right.
Either because they didn't want to, or it's degraded, or because someone came back and removed the situation. So, images on social media platforms are showing the statue of Victoria doused in red paint after it had been pulled down in a similar fashion to the statue of Edward Colston in Bristol last year, whilst other images showed the statue of Elizabeth II lying face down on the floor. The statue of Victoria was designed by British sculptor George Frampton and depicts the Queen seated on a throne holding an orb and a sceptre.
As is proper.
Traditional. It has been situated in front of the lawn of the Manitoba Legislation Building in Winnipeg since 1904. So, again, it's a statue. It's not...
It's over 100 years old.
The other thing here being, like, the Queen's not responsible for the schools. I don't care what your opinion on this is. Like, the monarchy hasn't been involved in politics and sullied themselves with it for quite a long time.
But it's not even that. Imagine thinking that the Queen of a world-spanning empire, the sovereign of a world-spanning empire, is interested in what some province in Canada does with the natives.
Well, I think it was the Canadian government, but I don't know if it's the Confederation at this point. But it's the thing of just like the Canadians had their independence in the sense of being able to make their own laws.
Yeah.
So it's their decision.
It wasn't called devolution. It was called
Dominionization.
Yeah, that's it. Dominion status. That's right.
So that's up to them. That's not the purview of the Crown, nor has it been the purview of the Crown for a long time. Never mind Victoria. And then Elizabeth II.
Never mind Elizabeth II.
So
I don't want to get defensive about the Queen, but I really don't see how she's culpable here.
Oh, I will. I love the Queen. So, according to the protesters at the scene, the depictions of the British royals were representative of colonialism. Doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean,
Doesn't make any goddamn sense.
I mean, technically, in the way that like Britain exists,
they're symbols of Britain.
Yeah.
Canada, I'm sorry, natives, you lost. You lost the wars. That's fundamentally why you are not the ones whose culture dominates Canada. It is why you don't dominate the culture of the government, and therefore,
I mean, Canada
it's British.
was a colony.
Therefore, to attack the British monarchy, that doesn't attack colonialism. Doesn't make any goddamn sense. Like, it's just reality. If it had been the French who had taken it instead, if we had not bothered with taking any parts of Canada, well, the French would have taken it because they did. They took the Quebec
absolutely.
region.
We had to conquer it from them.
So I did a stupid argument.
French.
So, wearing orange T-shirts to honour the Indigenous children, protesters held placards reading, "quote We were children once. Bring them home." Another read, "Whilst this country celebrates Canada Day, Indigenous people are digging up our babies that Canada killed." And again, I have sympathy for the people in this instance because, of course, their children were stolen by the state, which is an evil thing to do. And leftists, what's your opinion on that?
I think you make a good point about infant mortality rates because we don't know how these children died.
My knowledge might not be perfect. I imagine people in Canada are furiously typing information we don't know. I'm sorry about that.
No. Please do correct us in the comment sections because, like I don't know how these kids died. Are they, were they found with wounds, broken bones, or was it that they died of illnesses? And I mean, don't get me wrong, I agree.
My understanding is it's lack of treatment that you would have otherwise got,
right?
Which is a great point raised by a lady in one of the documentaries about the situation, which she was at the school and she's now grown up. She's like in her 80s or something.
Yeah.
And she says, well, if these schools were so good, why wasn't every white kid in them? I was like, because they're not good. That's the point.
Yeah.
They are horrible things, and I wouldn't agree with them. I mean, stealing kids from their parents.
No. Of course, they obviously don't steal kids from their parents and then don't bury them in unmarked graves. But the thing is, our babies that Canada killed, is that accurate? Because did they kill them or did they die of a disease and then just bury them inappropriately?
It's an interesting point.
But anyway, I don't know.
So annually, July 1st marks the national holiday of Canada Day, which celebrates the country's confederation. The 145th anniversary of the confederation has been blotted by the discovery of 182 unmarked graves of Indigenous children on July 30th near a former Catholic boarding school in British Columbia. Victoria and Elizabeth II not Catholics, so can't blame them for Catholicism. So on the... I'm just taking a punt at Catholicism, because why not? But also the point there are 182 kids over a period of, of 100 and something odd years. Yeah. So, to say that this is unbelievable, I don't know. I don't know what
again, with infant mortality rates and things like that, like, that's just over one a year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to defend these things or anything like that. I just want to be accurate.
So there are also worse examples of this. So on June 24th, 751 people were found at a similar gravesite, which was preceded by discovery of 215 bodies at another gravesite in another school in Canada. So these schools, seem to be horrible, which is why they were not used for all the kids, as the lady points out, who was a victim of them, because she was kidnapped for her parents. Until 1990, some 150,000 Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis children were forcibly enrolled in the 139 assimilation schools. According to the Commission of the Inquiry that conducted in November 2020, that Canada had committed cultural genocide. More than 4,000 children died of disease and neglect in the schools. Speaking about the discoveries, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said, "The horrific findings have rightfully pressed on us to reflect on the country's historical failures and the injustices that still exist for Indigenous people and many others in Canada. We as Canadians must be honest with ourselves and about our past." Sure. Yeah. You should be honest with yourself. I'm interested in the description there of cultural genocide.
I find it interesting that there's 150,000 kids with 4,000 who dies of disease and neglect. Obviously, that's terrible, but that's not as high as I would have expected if it was a mendacious campaign to kill the children.
That's why they're describing it as cultural genocide, not genocide. Some leftists have been saying online this is an example of Canada engaging in a genocide, whereas China doesn't, or something like that.
Well, then by that definition, China is absolutely engaging in a genocide.
Yeah, but I love the idea that cultural genocide is on the menu, because that's a term which has been demonized as being a far-right term in the past, that the far-right in Europe are claiming there's cultural genocide by the fact that percentages of the country that identify as, say, French or Polish or German or British is going down. Yeah. And therefore, this is a genocide of our culture and we must protect it. But in this context, apparently it's okay to be used. Interesting.
One rule for one, one rule for another.
Like, I understand that in this case people are being killed, but in Britain, children are being raped en masse and still ended up getting killed, actually.
People have still been killed here.
I think there were 3 girls who were victims of grooming gangs who were killed by their abusers or in suspicious circumstances, and there was 1 girl who was burnt with her family member. Like, I
And
think
that's
her
not
mother.
speak of all the jihadi attacks.
Not to mention the jihadis. Quite right. Probably all the hate crimes as well, which aren't recorded. So there's this, which, yeah, I mean, no one's in agreement about the schools. Everyone's like, yeah, schools were bad. These schools were pretty awful. That's not a license to pull down statues of the monarchy, nor is it licensed to set fire to churches.
Nor is it licensed to say that Canada is bad, because some people in the past did bad things.
Like, one bad policy means the whole thing has to go. No, not going to buy that. Sorry. So that's nonsense. But it also gets a massive prick up on British people, because when you attack the monarchy in any country, you are attacking Britain in and of itself, because...
Well, Britain is the United Kingdom.
Yes. So that's why we have I think, reasonable interest in all of this, which is that, what's that about? And what's the Canadian government's response? So far, I haven't heard a response in which they're like, no, we will put the statues back up. Anyone who did this will be charged with a crime. I did see that the one person who was arrested at the scene of the Victoria statue was a man who was upset that they had pulled down the statues. So the police arrested the man who was upset instead of arresting people pulling down statues.
Oh, there we go.
What a privilege. Anyway, so I also noticed that George underneath here also commented, considering that the legal system in Canada is based on the Crown, this should warrant a hefty punishment, not to mention the destruction of such historical statues. Given how cucked Canada is, though, I doubt anything will happen.
Oh, of course not.
George is probably right. Yeah. But this is disgusting to see. I want everyone involved charged with appropriate crimes because they have committed them.
Absolutely.